What if you could move objects with nothing but your mind? No hands, no strings, just pure thought bending reality to your will. From 11 snapping necks without touching them in Stranger Things, to Jedi yanking lightsabers from their opponents' hands. Telekinesis is one of science fiction's most powerful and seductive abilities. But here's the real question. Is telekinesis pure fantasy, or are we already taking the first tiny steps towards it? Today we break down the real science behind telekinesis, starting with Stranger Things, then Star Wars, and finally looking at how some other sci-fi universes imagine mind over matter as well. Because once you understand what telekinesis really requires, you may be surprised by how close, and how far, we really are. Telekinesis literally means movement at a distance by the mind. Not by strength, not by muscles, not by technology. Just pure thought causing physical force. In sci-fi, telekinesis usually does three things. It applies force to an object, it does so without physical contact, and it's controlled consciously and precisely by the mind. That sounds simple, but in real science terms, it's a bit of a nightmare. Because in the real universe, forces don't come from nowhere. Every movement requires energy, a transfer mechanism, and some sort of medium or field to carry it. So the big scientific problem isn't moving the object, it's answering one question. How does the brain, on its own, push the universe back? In Stranger Things, telekinesis comes at a price. 11 bleeds, she collapses, she screams in pain. And scientifically, that's one of the most realistic portrayals of telekinesis on screen. Because moving matter would require energy, a lot of it. To lift even a small object against gravity, you have to supply a force equal to its weight, and then sustain that force, that energy, over time. So here's the reality. The human brain runs on about 20 watts of power. That's less than a dim light bulb. Even if Eleven's brain were 100 times more efficient than the average human, she still wouldn't have anywhere near the energy needed to flip a car or smash a wall or throw a grown adult across the room. So Stranger Things quietly actually implies something. 11 can't just be using her brain. She must be acting as a gateway, tapping into some sort of external energy source. And that idea is a far more scientifically plausible one than some sort of brain magic. In Star Wars, the Force isn't just some telekinesis. It's a cosmic field. It flows through all living things. It binds the galaxy together. And trained minds can manipulate it. From a physics standpoint, that's surprisingly elegant. Real physics already relies on invisible fields. Gravitational fields, electromagnetic fields, and quantum fields that permeate all empty space. In Star Wars, the Force behaves like a biological interface to just another universal field. Jedi don't generate the energy themselves, they just redirect it. That neatly sidesteps the brain power problem. But here's the issue. There is currently no known field that responds to neural activity, that can be consciously shaped or can exert any sort of macroscopic force on an object. If such a field existed, we'd see spontaneous force anomalies, energy conservation violations, and measurable effects in particle physics. So far, scientists have seen none of that. The force is therefore internally consistent, but externally unsupported. Here's where sci-fi gets something very right, and also very wrong, about telekinesis. Your brain is exceptional at control, but it's terrible at raw power. Human brains excel at pattern recognition, prediction, and fine motor coordination. That's why we can thread needles, play instruments, and pilot aircraft. But we do all this by controlling tools, not by replacing them. So, real-world telekinesis. By using brain-computer interfaces, humans can already move external objects like robotic arms or drones, and type using nothing but thought. No muscles involved. Is that telekinesis? Functionally, yes. Biologically, no. The brain isn't applying force directly, it's just issuing commands. The heavy lifting is done by motors, power supplies, and external energy sources. This is the only known current form of telekinesis that obeys known physics. And it works, but it comes with wires, electrodes, latency, and calibration. Unfortunately, it doesn't yet come with a Jedi level of elegance. Many other sci-fi franchises quietly admit the same sort of truth about telekinesis. In Chronicle, telekinesis is unstable and destructive. In Akira, it escalates into uncontrollable biological catastrophe. In The Matrix, telekinesis is really code manipulation. In Dune, mental powers rely on extreme training, drugs, and genetics. Across sci-fi, one real pattern emerges about telekinesis. Pure mind-powered telekinesis always breaks something, whether it's the body, or reality, or the rules of the universe. The more realistic the setting, the more limits are imposed. Some argue that telekinesis might emerge from quantum effects. After all, consciousness arrives from quantum particles, and observation affects quantum systems. But here's the catch. Quantum effects don't scale. They dominate at atomic levels, but then they vanish into the noise at macroscopic scales. By the time you reach a coffee mug, quantum weirdness has completely averaged out. There's no known mechanism for thoughts to survive decoherence, amplify across trillions of particles, and still remain controllable. Quantum telekinesis sounds clever, but it actually collapses very fast under the maths. So what would it take for telekinesis to be real? Well, for true telekinesis to exist, a breakthrough is required. Science would need to discover a new fundamental force or field. It would need to discover a biological organ capable of coupling to it. It would need to find a way to draw massive energy safely. And it would need to find a perfect neural control without any sort of feedback instability. Miss any one of these four things and telekinesis fails. It's not pessimism, it's just physics. Telekinesis isn't impossible because we lack imagination. It's impossible because the universe is remarkably strict about energy, causality, and the laws of conservation. But here's the twist. We are already moving objects with our minds, just not directly. The future of telekinesis doesn't look like 11 in Stranger Things. It doesn't look like a Jedi. It looks like neural interfaces, external machines, and technology doing the heavy lifting. And that raises one final question. If the result feels the same, does the mechanism matter? What do you think? If you could move objects with your mind, but only through a machine, would that still count as telekinesis? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more real science behind sci-fi powers, then subscribe to the channel, The Real Science of Sci-Fi. I'm Dr. Dan Stokes, and I will see you next week.